The first time I heard my husband's thoughts, he was standing in front of 200 wedding guests, promising to never love me. Adrian Blackwood's voice carried through the cathedral with perfect control, cold enough to make the candles seem warmer by comparison. He stood beneath the tall stained glass windows in a black tailored suit. His pale hair brushed back from a face so beautiful it looked almost unreal, like an angel carved from ice and taught how to frighten people. Every person in the room watched him with the same careful stillness, as if one wrong breath might offend the Enigma heir of the Blackwood family. I stood across from him in white, my hands hidden inside thin gloves, trying not to let anyone see them tremble. My name was Ethan Miller, youngest son of a family that had run out of money, favors, and time. By sunrise, I had been a son. By noon, I had become payment. My father had called it an honor. My mother had called it survival. The contract called it an arranged marriage between two old bloodlines, a strategic union meant to preserve stability between houses. No one called it what it felt like. A door closing, a key turning, a life being handed to a stranger with silver eyes and no expression. Adrian's family sat on one side of the cathedral, all pale faces, dark coats, and unreadable smiles. Mine sat on the other, dressed better than they could afford, looking relieved in a way that made my chest ache. I tried not to look at them. I tried not to look at Adrian either, but that was impossible. He drew the eye the way winter draws silence. He was tall, at least 6'3", with shoulders squared as if he had spent his whole life bracing against something no one else could see. His scent was faint, carefully restrained, cedar wood after rain and cold iron beneath it. Even with suppressants in the air, even with every guest pretending this was only politics, I could feel the pressure of what he was. Enigma. Not Alpha. Not Omega. Something rarer, older, and whispered about in the same tone people used for storms and loaded guns. I had heard stories about Enigmas growing up, most of them meant to scare children into obedience. They said Enigmas could bend a room without raising their voice. They said they could hide every feeling until not even their own reflection knew the truth. They said a Blackwood Enigma had never married for love. Looking at Adrian, I believed that last part. The priest's voice faded around us like rain against glass. When it came time for the vows, Adrian took my hand with a gentleness so precise it felt practiced, not kind. His fingers were warm through the glove. That surprised me more than it should have. I had expected him to feel like marble. His eyes did not soften. His mouth did not hesitate. He looked directly at me and said, "This marriage is a duty between families. I will honor the agreement, provide you protection, and expect discretion in return. Do not mistake this for affection." A few people in the pews lowered their eyes. Someone from my family inhaled sharply. My face burned, but I kept my chin lifted. I had promised myself I would not cry in front of the Blackwoods. I would not give them that. I opened my mouth to answer with the vow written for me, the one full of loyalty and obedience and carefully polished lies, but before I could speak, another voice passed through me. It did not come from the priest. It did not come from the guests. It was Adrian's voice, unmistakably his, low and steady, but it sounded as if it had been placed directly behind my ribs. "I am sorry. They should never have dragged you into my curse." My breath stopped. The cathedral did not change. The candles still burned. The guests still watched. Adrian's lips remained closed. His expression stayed empty, flawless, controlled. But I had heard him. I had heard him as clearly as if he had leaned down and whispered into my ear. I stared at him, searching his face for any sign that he had spoken, any crack in that perfect cold mask. There was nothing. Only those silver eyes fixed on mine, sharp enough to cut through silk. The priest gently prompted me, and I realized several seconds had passed. My throat felt tight, but I forced out the words I had been given. "I accept this bond for the honor of both houses." The lie tasted bitter. Adrian slid the ring onto my finger. It was platinum, cool and heavy, set with a small black stone that caught the candlelight like a trapped piece of midnight. The moment it touched my skin, that impossible voice returned, closer this time, threaded with something that sounded almost like pain. "Run, Ethan. Please. Before the bond recognizes you." My knees nearly gave out. Adrian's hand tightened around mine for half a second, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough to keep me standing. To the room. He looked like a cold husband guiding a nervous Omega through an unwanted ceremony. To me, he had become something far more terrifying. A man whose mouth had just rejected me while his mind begged me to escape. The priest pronounced us married. Applause filled the cathedral, soft, elegant, and hollow. Adrian bent toward me, close enough that the cameras could catch what looked like a polite wedding kiss against my cheek. His lips never touched my skin. His breath moved beside my ear, controlled and quiet. "Smile," he murmured. "They are watching." And beneath that, deeper than sound, I heard the thought he never meant for anyone to know. "If you look afraid, they will know you can hear me." The smile Adrian asked for felt like another piece of the contract, something I signed with my face instead of my name. I held it through the applause, through the photographers, through the congratulations that brushed over me like cold hands. Everyone wanted to see the new Blackwood spouse. No one wanted to see Ethan Miller. They looked at the ring, the suit, the pale Omega beside the Enigma heir, and decided they understood the whole story. A desperate family had offered a pretty son, and a powerful family had accepted him. Simple, clean, convenient. Only I knew there was a voice moving beneath the polished surface of the day, and that voice belonged to the one person in the cathedral who looked like he felt nothing at all. Adrian kept his hand at the small of my back as we walked down the aisle, not touching too much, not touching too little. To the guests, it must have looked formal. To me, every inch of space between his palm and my spine felt charged with warning. He guided me past rows of white roses and silver ribbons, past my mother dabbing at dry eyes, past my father standing straighter than he had in months because his debts had finally found a body to wear. I wanted to ask Adrian what he meant. I wanted to turn to him right there in front of everyone and say, "What curse? What bond? What do you know about me that I do not know about myself?" But his public voice reached me first, quiet and flat. "Do not speak unless necessary." Then his hidden voice followed like a crack under a locked door. "Not here. Please, Ethan, not here." I nearly stumbled on the cathedral steps. Outside, the afternoon sky had turned the color of polished steel. A line of black cars waited at the curb, engines humming softly, security men standing with umbrellas even though it had not started to rain. Adrian opened the rear door of the center car himself. That small act made the watching crowd murmur, as if kindness from him were as rare as snow in July. I slid inside, and he followed, bringing with him the faint scent of cedarwood and cold iron. The door shut. The applause faded behind tinted glass. For the first time since the ceremony began, we were alone. I turned toward him, my heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. "What is happening to me?" Adrian looked straight ahead. "You are overwhelmed. That is expected after a public ceremony." His words were calm enough to pass any test. His thoughts were not. He heard me. The ring woke it faster than I expected. They must not know. If the elders suspect the bond opened, they will move tonight. I gripped the edge of the leather seat. "Do not lie to me." His eyes cut to mine then, sharp and silver and briefly unguarded. For half a second, the cold husband vanished, and I saw a man holding back a storm with both hands. "I am not lying," he said. "I am trying to keep you breathing." My mouth went dry. The car pulled away from the curb, gliding through downtown traffic while the city blurred beyond the windows in streaks of gray, glass, and late afternoon light. I had lived in Boston all my life, but from the back of Adrian Blackwood's car, the city looked unfamiliar, like I had crossed into a version of it where every street led farther from who I used to be. We drove for nearly 40 minutes, leaving the dense buildings behind for older roads lined with bare trees and iron gates. Adrian did not speak again. Neither did I, but silence did not protect me from him anymore. His thoughts came in fragments, not constant, but sharp enough to make me flinch. "He is too pale. Did he eat this morning?" "No. The Millers would have been too busy presenting him to feed him properly. Morrison is watching him in the mirror. Replace Morrison tomorrow." "No, tonight. Anyone who reports to my aunt cannot be near him." I stared at my gloved hands, stunned by the strange ache those thoughts created in me. Out loud, Adrian had told me not to expect affection. Inside, he was worrying about whether I had eaten. That contradiction felt more dangerous than cruelty. Cruelty I could understand. Cruelty had rules. This did not. At last, the car turned through a pair of black iron gates taller than any house I had ever lived in. Blackwood Manor rose at the end of a long gravel drive, pale stone and dark windows, its towers cutting into the sky like the edges of old bones. It was beautiful in the way a winter lake is beautiful, still enough to hide how deep it is. Warm light glowed behind a few windows, but most of the house remained shadowed. As the car stopped, the front doors opened, and a line of servants appeared in perfect formation. Their faces were calm. Their eyes were not. Adrian stepped out first, then offered me his hand. I hesitated only a moment before taking it. His fingers closed around mine, steady and careful. "Welcome home," he said for the benefit of the staff. "I am sorry this place is another cage." The words hit me harder than the cold air. Another cage, as if he knew I had already been living in one. Inside, the foyer was enormous, all white marble, Blackwood, and a chandelier that looked like frozen rain. A woman in a charcoal dress stepped forward and bowed her head. She had silver hair twisted into a flawless knot and a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Master Adrian." "Mr. Ethan. I am Mrs. Vale, head of household. Your rooms are prepared." Adrian's expression did not change. "Mr. Ethan will be served dinner in the south dining room. He is not to be questioned, scented, followed, or touched without permission. No one from the east wing is to approach him." Mrs. Vale lowered her gaze. "Of course." But her thoughts brushed against me suddenly, faint and sour, not as clear as Adrian's, but enough to make my stomach tighten. So it is true. The Miller boy has the face of a key. I inhaled sharply. Adrian's hand tightened around mine. His public voice stayed ice cold. "Leave us." The servants scattered at once. He led me up the grand staircase, past portraits of pale Blackwoods with silver eyes and solemn mouths. At the top, he stopped before a set of double doors. "These are your rooms. Mine are across the hall." Across the hall. Not beside me. Not with me. A husband in name, a stranger by design. "There are 3 rules," he continued. "Do not enter the east wing. Do not ask about the mark on my hand. Do not come to my room after midnight." I looked at him, anger finally rising through the fear. "Is that all I am going to receive from you?" "Rules." His face hardened. "Rules keep people alive in this house. The east wing is where they broke me. The mark will tell him he belongs to the curse. If he comes to my room after midnight, I may not have the strength to send him away." My anger vanished. Adrian opened my door, revealing a suite larger than the entire apartment I had once shared with my mother during our worst year. Cream walls, blue velvet chairs, a fireplace already lit, and a tray of food waiting on a small table. Soup, bread, sliced apples, tea with honey. Simple, warm, chosen by someone who had noticed I had not eaten. I turned back to him, but his mask was already in place. "Rest," he said. "You have had a long day. Please eat. Please lock the door. Please do not hate me yet." Then he stepped away, leaving me alone with a room that looked like comfort and felt like a warning. I closed the door slowly, pressed my back against it, and lifted my shaking hand to the ring. The black stone gave off no warmth, no light, no sign of magic or danger. Yet somewhere across the hall, behind another closed door, my cold arranged husband was thinking of me as if I were both a threat and something precious. And for the first time since my family sold me into this marriage, I wondered whether Adrian Blackwood was truly the monster in the house, or only the first prisoner I had managed to hear. By midnight, I understood that a beautiful room could still feel like a locked box. The fire in my suite burned low and steady, turning the cream walls gold, but I could not make myself sit, sleep, or touch the dinner tray for more than a few bites. Every time the old floorboard settled, my heart jumped. Every time the wind pressed against the tall windows, I thought of the east wing, of Mrs. Vale's hidden thought, of Adrian's warning that rules kept people alive in this house. I changed out of the wedding clothes by myself because I did not trust any servant to come near me. The white fabric pulled at my feet like shed skin, and for a moment I stared at my reflection in the long mirror without recognizing the person looking back. Pale face, tired eyes, platinum ring, black stone. Ethan Miller had entered the cathedral that morning. Someone else had returned from it. I was brushing my hair with a silver comb I found on the vanity when the first sound came from the hallway. It was not a footstep. It was softer than that, a low shifting of weight just beyond my door, followed by silence so complete it seemed deliberate. I froze, comb suspended in my hand. Then Adrian's thought touched the edge of my mind, faint but unmistakable. He is still awake. Of course he is still awake. He has been taken from everything familiar and placed inside a house that eats warmth. My breath caught. He was outside my door. Not in his room across the hall. Not in some distant study. Outside my door, thinking of me. I walked barefoot across the carpet as quietly as I could and stopped with my hand inches from the handle. I should leave. If he opens it, I will not know what to say. A pause. Tell him the truth. No. The truth would frighten him more than the lies. I pressed my palm over my mouth. There was a pain in those thoughts that did not match the man who had stood before me like winter made flesh. A minute passed, then another. At last, I heard the smallest sound, fabric brushing wood. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only a dark wool coat lay folded on the floor, placed carefully before my threshold like an offering. The air beyond the room was cold enough to raise goose bumps along my arms. I picked up the coat, and cedarwood wrapped around me, warm from his body. Something small and foolish moved in my chest. Not trust. Not yet. But a question. I slept only after locking the door twice. And even then, my dreams were full of silver eyes and voices trapped behind glass. Morning arrived gray and quiet. I woke to a soft knock and found a young maid waiting with breakfast. She looked barely older than me, with nervous blue eyes and a tray held too tightly in both hands. "Mr. Ethan," she said, voice careful. "Master Adrian asked that you eat before coming downstairs." I almost laughed because the words sounded like an order, but behind her polite expression, I caught a flicker of thought, weak and blurred compared to Adrian's. Poor thing. He looks like he did not sleep. I stepped back. "What is your name?" The maid blinked, startled by the question. "Clara, sir." "Thank you, Clara." Her shoulders softened, and for one brief second, the house felt less like a museum and more like a place where people still breathed. After breakfast, Mrs. Vale escorted me through the manor. She explained the south drawing room, the conservatory, the breakfast room, the library I was allowed to use, and the gardens visible beyond tall panes of glass. She did not mention the east wing. She did not need to. Every hallway seemed arranged to avoid it. The forbidden side of the house waited behind a pair of carved black doors at the end of a long corridor, where the air felt colder and the light seemed thinner. As we passed, I noticed strange symbols etched into the doorframe, almost hidden beneath layers of varnish. My ring gave a faint pulse against my finger. Mrs. Vale stopped walking. Her head turned toward me slowly. "Is something wrong, Mr. Ethan?" Her smile was polite. Her thought was not. Did it react to him? I curled my hand into a fist, hiding the stone. No, I was only admiring the craftsmanship. We continued, but my skin prickled until the doors disappeared behind us. Adrian was waiting in the library by late morning, standing near the window with a tablet in one hand and his other hand covered by a black leather glove. The mark. The one rule I was not allowed to ask about. Sunlight touched the side of his face, making him look less like a monster and more like a portrait left unfinished. "You will have access to the gardens, the south wing, and any room Clara opens for you," he said without greeting. "You will not leave the estate without security." "Am I a guest or a prisoner?" I asked. His eyes lifted to mine. "You are my spouse." That was his spoken answer. His thought came darker, quieter. "You are the only person in this house they cannot be allowed to reach." "Who are they?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The tablet went still in his hand. For one heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then Adrian set it down with dangerous care. "Who told you there was a they?" I should have lied. A smarter person would have lied. But I was tired of being moved around a board by people who knew more than I did. "You did." His face did not change, but the air in the library seemed to draw tight. I said no such thing. Not out loud. The silence after that was so sharp it felt like the whole house had stopped listening from behind its walls. Adrian crossed the room in 3 measured steps and stopped several feet from me, far enough to be proper, close enough that his cedarwood scent filled my lungs. "Ethan," he said, and it was the first time he had spoken my name without witnesses. "Whatever you think is happening, you must never admit it to anyone." I lifted my chin, though my hands trembled. "Then tell me what is happening." His jaw tightened. "I cannot. If he knows, fear will change the bond. If fear changes the bond, the elders will feel it." Out loud, he said, "The Blackwood family has enemies." That is not an answer. It is the only safe answer. I looked at his gloved hand. "And the mark?" His eyes flashed. "That is the second rule." The thought beneath it broke through, raw and immediate. If he sees it, he will understand that the ring did not choose him by accident. A knock sounded at the library door before I could respond. Mrs. Vale entered with a silver envelope on a tray. Forgive the interruption. Lady Blackwood requests both of you at tonight's family banquet. Adrian went perfectly still. In his mind, one sentence struck like a bell in a dark room. They know. I watched his face become colder than ever, a mask sealing over every crack I had almost seen. Tell my aunt we will attend, he said. Mrs. Vale bowed and left. Adrian turned back to the window, but his hidden voice stayed with me, low with dread. Smile tonight, Ethan. Stay beside me. Trust nothing beautiful in this house. And then, so softly I almost thought I imagined it, he added inside the silence of his own mind, especially not me. By sunset, Blackwood Manor had dressed itself for a celebration, but every beautiful thing inside it felt like a warning. The chandeliers were lowered and filled with warm light, the floors polished until they reflected the ceiling like black water, and white flowers spilled from silver vases along the walls. Servants moved silently through the corridors with trays of crystal glasses and folded linens, their faces calm, their thoughts nervous and thin. I stood before the mirror in my suite, while Clara adjusted the cuffs of my evening jacket with careful fingers. The suit Adrian had chosen for me was deep blue, almost midnight, tailored so perfectly it made me look more confident than I felt. Against my pale skin, the color brought out the tired shadows beneath my eyes. Clara glanced at me in the mirror and quickly looked away. He looks like a prince being sent to court for judgment, not a newly married spouse. I pretended not to hear her thought. That had become my newest survival skill. I could not react every time a hidden sentence brushed my mind, not when I still barely understood why it was happening. Adrian's thoughts came to me clearly, like a voice in a quiet room. Everyone else sounded distant, distorted, as if their secrets were pressed behind thick glass. But even broken pieces could cut. When Clara finished, she stepped back and whispered, "Master Adrian is waiting outside." My heartbeat stumbled. I opened the door to find him in the hallway, dressed in black as always, one hand gloved, his pale hair catching the low gold light. He looked impossibly composed, cold, untouchable. Then his eyes moved over me, and his thought struck me with a warmth his expression refused to show. Beautiful. The word was so unexpected that I forgot how to breathe. Adrian's mouth remained flat. You are presentable. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the difference between what he said and what he thought was becoming unbearable. Thank you, I said quietly. His gaze sharpened, as if he heard something in my voice that worried him. Do not smile at me like that here. They will notice. Out loud, he offered his arm. Stay close. I placed my hand on his sleeve, and together we descended the grand staircase toward the banquet hall. With every step, the air grew heavier. Scents layered over one another below us, expensive perfume, polished wood, wine, candle smoke, and beneath it all, the cool metallic pressure of the Blackwood bloodline. The family had gathered beneath a ceiling painted with pale stars. They were beautiful in a way that did not comfort me. Men and women with smooth white faces, elegant clothes, silver or dark hair, and smiles that looked practiced in mirrors. They turned when we entered. Conversation softened. Forks touched plates with delicate clicks. I felt like an animal walking into a room full of collectors. At the far end of the table sat Lady Celeste Blackwood, Adrian's aunt. She was tall and slender, with white blonde hair arranged like a crown and eyes the same silver as Adrian's, though hers held no winter sadness, only calculation. She rose just enough to honor him and not enough to show submission. Adrian, she said, her voice honeyed and sharp. And this must be our Ethan. The house looks brighter already. Her smile widened as she studied me. Such a pretty little key. Shame his family never understood his value. My fingers tightened on Adrian's arm before I could stop myself. His body went still. He heard my breath change, even if he did not know the words I had caught. Aunt Celeste, he said, we will not stay long. Nonsense. The family has waited so eagerly to welcome your spouse. Her gaze moved to my ring. The black stone seemed to darken under her attention. Come sit. Let us admire what destiny has delivered. Dinner began with polite cruelty hidden under silverware and candlelight. They asked about my education, my music lessons, my health, my family's estate, each question wrapped in manners and edged with insult. I answered carefully. Adrian answered less. When a cousin with pale green eyes asked whether the Millers had prepared me for life among people of consequence, Adrian set down his glass. The soft sound silenced half the table. Ethan was prepared well enough to stand beside me, he said. That is the only position here that matters. His voice was calm. His thought was not. Say one more word, and I will remove you from every inheritance list before dessert. I lowered my eyes to hide the shock on my face. Around the table, thoughts flickered like insects near a flame. The Miller boy is too quiet. Does he know? The ring has settled already. Adrian is watching him too closely. Wait until the blood moon. The last thought came from somewhere near Lady Celeste. It was faint, but the phrase slid coldly down my spine. Blood moon. I reached for my water, but my hand trembled. Adrian noticed immediately. Enough, he said, rising. Ethan is tired. Celeste's smile did not move. So soon? Newlyweds are usually more eager to celebrate. A few soft laughs followed. Adrian looked down the table, and the laughter died as if cut from the air. My marriage is not family entertainment. He turned to me. Come. I stood too quickly. The room tilted for a second, not because I was weak, but because the thoughts around me suddenly grew louder. Not words now, but hunger, suspicion, excitement, expectation. The banquet hall blurred at the edges. A servant passed behind me with a tray, and from his mind came one clear sentence, terrified and unwilling. They told me to watch whether the Omega reacts to the East Wing bell. Before I could understand it, a sound rang through the manor. One low chime. Deep, distant, from the forbidden side of the house. Every Blackwood at the table became perfectly still. No one looked toward the door. No one breathed too loudly. Adrian's face turned white in a way I had never seen. His thought crashed into me like thunder. No, not tonight. Not while he is here. Then Lady Celeste looked directly at me, smiling as if she had just confirmed a secret. Did you hear something, Ethan? She asked. I understood then. The banquet had never been a welcome. It had been a test. Adrian stepped between me and the table before I could answer. His gloved hand found mine, firm and protective, and his public voice was ice. He heard nothing. But inside his mind, where only I could hear him, Adrian was begging. Lie to her, Ethan. For both of us, lie? I lied because Adrian asked me to, and because every instinct I had was screaming that the truth would turn the banquet hall into a courtroom with me as the evidence. I looked at Lady Celeste Blackwood, at her perfect smile and winter-bright eyes, and forced my own face into polite confusion. I am sorry, I said softly. I think the evening has made me lightheaded. I did not hear anything unusual. For one fragile second, the room remained still. Then Celeste's smile sharpened, not enough for anyone to call it displeasure, but enough for me to know she had wanted me to fail. Of course, she said. A long day for a young spouse. Around the table, thoughts shifted like silk over knives. He is trained better than expected. Or frightened. Adrian has warned him. Test him again. The voices pressed against me from every side. No longer scattered whispers, but a rising tide. I could hear forks touching porcelain, wine moving in crystal, breath passing through teeth, and beneath it all the minds of the Blackwoods opening like dark windows. Too many. Too close. Too hungry. The cousin with pale green eyes wondered whether my blood would react before the moon reached its full height. An older uncle counted how many security men Adrian had placed near the south corridor. Mrs. Vale, standing near the wall, thought only one thing again and again with frightened discipline. Do not look at the east door. Do not look at the east door. Do not look at the east door. So of course I looked. At the far end of the banquet hall, partly hidden behind a curtain of white flowers, stood a narrow black door I had not noticed before. No one faced it directly. No servant approached it. Even the candlelight seemed to bend away from its frame. The ring on my finger pulsed once, cold and deep, like a heartbeat that did not belong to me. Adrian moved his thumb over my knuckles, a small gesture hidden between our bodies. We are leaving, he said. Celeste tilted her head. Before dessert? Yes. His voice left no room for courtesy. My spouse needs rest. My spouse. Not the Miller boy. Not the arrangement. Not the key. For some reason, the words steadied me. He led me from the table, and every gaze followed. The closer we came to the doors, the louder the thoughts became, scraping over one another until I could barely separate them. He heard the bell. The bond is waking. Adrian is weakening. Pretty thing. Dangerous thing. Open him, and the Enigma follows. My breath grew shallow. The chandeliers blurred above me into rings of gold. Adrian's public mask never cracked, but his mind turned sharply toward mine, as if he could feel me slipping. Focus on my hand. Only my hand. One step. Another. Stay with me, Ethan. I clung to that voice like a rope. We reached the hallway, and the banquet doors closed behind us with a soft, final sound. The moment they did, my knees nearly folded. Adrian caught me by the elbows before I could fall, careful and fast, keeping me upright without pulling me too close. Breathe, he said. Slowly. I tried. The hallway seemed longer than before, the marble floor stretching away into shadow. There were too many, I whispered. Too many voices. His eyes locked on mine. You heard more than me? The fear in his thought answered before his face did. It is spreading. The house is forcing the bond open. I heard them, I said. Your aunt. Your family. The servants. They were testing me. He looked over his shoulder once, then guided me through a side corridor into a glass conservatory filled with night-blooming flowers. The air inside was warmer, damp with the scent of soil and white petals. Rain had begun to fall outside, soft against the glass roof. Adrian closed the door and stood with his back to it, as if keeping the entire manor out by the strength of his body alone. Tell me exactly what you heard. I laughed once, but it came out broken. You mean besides the part where your family thinks I am a key? His expression went empty. Too empty. That was when I knew the word meant something. Ethan. No, I said, stepping back. You do not get to say my name like that, and then hide behind another rule. They call me a key. They mentioned a blood moon. They know I can hear things. Your aunt knows. Mrs. Vale knows. Maybe everyone in this house knows except me. His gloved hand curled at his side. Not everyone. That is not comforting. It is not meant to be. His voice lowered. It is meant to be accurate. The rain thickened overhead, silver lines running down the glass. For a moment, Adrian looked less like the master of Blackwood Manor and more like a man trapped in the only corner where he could still breathe. Why did you marry me? I asked. The real reason. His answer came at once, cold and practiced. For the alliance between our families. But his mind betrayed him before the last word left his mouth. Because the moment I saw your portrait, the pain stopped. I stared at him. The conservatory seemed to fall silent around us. What pain? Adrian's eyes closed briefly, as if the question itself hurt. Do not answer. If he pities you, it will be worse. If he fears you, it will be over. Adrian, I said, softer this time. He opened his eyes. In the rain-washed light, their silver looked almost human. The Enigma bloodline carries a condition, he said carefully. That is all you need to know tonight. A curse, I corrected, remembering his first thought in the cathedral. His jaw tightened. You should not have heard that. But I did. I took one step closer. And I heard you tell yourself not to comfort me outside my room. I heard you worry that I had not eaten. I heard you beg me to lie at dinner. So stop pretending your mind has not already told me more truth than your mouth ever has. Something changed in his face then, small but devastating. The cold did not disappear. It cracked. Beneath it was exhaustion so old it frightened me more than anger would have. When I was 12, he said, each word controlled. The mark appeared on my hand. After that, my family taught me that emotion was dangerous. Attachment was dangerous. Love was the most dangerous thing of all. His thought followed, almost soundless. They taught me by making sure I had nothing left to love. The ache in my chest returned, sharper than before. I looked at his gloved hand. And me? He gave a humorless smile. You are what they have been waiting for. Before I could ask what that meant, the black stone in my ring flared cold against my skin. At the same instant, the conservatory lights flickered. From somewhere beyond the glass, deep inside the east wing, the bell rang again. This time, I did not only hear the sound. I heard a voice inside it, ancient, patient, and pleased. The listener has arrived. The voice in the bell did not echo through the conservatory the way sound should have. It opened inside me, slow and cold, like a door in a place I had never known existed. The listener has arrived. My ring burned with ice. The flowers around us trembled though no wind touched them, and every pane of glass above my head reflected not my face, but the black door at the end of the banquet hall. Adrian moved before I could speak. He seized my hand, not roughly, but with a fear so focused it felt like command. Do not answer it. His voice was sharp. His thought was sharper. It knows his mind now. It has tasted the bond. I swallowed, forcing air into lungs that felt too small. What is it? Adrian looked toward the conservatory doors as the manor settled around us. Every creak and whisper suddenly meaningful. The first Blackwood. I thought I had misheard him. A person? Not anymore. He pulled off his glove. For the first time, I saw the mark he had forbidden me to ask about. It covered the back of his left hand in thin silver lines beneath the skin. Not ink, not scar, but something luminous and alive, shaped like a circle broken by thorns. The same cold light flickered inside the black stone of my ring. The mark pulsed once. My ring answered. Adrian's face tightened, as if the response hurt him. Every enigma in my family is born with this seal. It keeps our instincts locked behind control. It keeps our thoughts private. It keeps the house safe from what we could become. His gaze lowered to my hand. And once in several generations, an Omega is born with the ability to hear through the seal. A listener, I whispered. The word tasted like something old. Adrian nodded once. A listener can calm an enigma, strengthen him, expose him, destroy him, if the bond is twisted badly enough. I pulled my hand back, not because I feared him, but because the room seemed to tilt beneath the weight of what he was saying. So your family wanted me because I can hear you? Because you can open me? His answer was quiet, almost ashamed. Rain slid down the glass in silver threads. Beyond the conservatory, the house remained bright and elegant, but now I understood that beauty was a curtain. Behind it waited generations of locked rooms, buried secrets, and people smiling while they measured how useful my blood might be. My family knew, I said. It was not a question. Adrian's silence confirmed it before his thoughts did. The Millers knew enough to sell him twice. Once as a spouse, once as a key. The word struck so deeply that I had to grip the edge of a stone planter to stay steady. My father's relief at the ceremony. My mother's dry eyes. Their careful refusal to meet my gaze. They had not merely given me away. They had delivered me to a house that had been waiting. Adrian stepped closer, then stopped himself, as if even comfort had rules. I tried to delay the marriage. But you still agreed. Pain flickered through his eyes. Because if I refused, Celeste would have taken you anyway, without the legal protection of my name. His mind followed, low and raw. I thought being hated by him would be safer than leaving him unclaimed. I looked up at him. Is that why you acted cold? Because you thought I would hate you. Hate is clean, he said. It has distance. It survives disappointment. That is a lonely way to live. A humorless breath left him. It is the only way I was taught. The bell rang a third time, softer now, less like a call, and more like a reminder. The conservatory lights dimmed, and for one impossible second, the glass walls reflected a boy instead of a man. Adrian at 12, pale and silent, standing in a room covered with the same thorn circle carved into the floor. I staggered as the image entered me. It was not a memory I asked for. It came through the bond in pieces, a child holding his marked hand against his chest, adults speaking over him about discipline, control, bloodline preservation, and necessary isolation. No clear violence. No sharp images. Only the unbearable shape of a childhood without warmth. A white room. A locked door. A boy learning that crying made the lights flicker, anger cracked mirrors, and wanting to be held made everyone step farther away. I gasped, and Adrian caught my shoulders. Ethan. His voice sounded distant. The vision shifted. The boy grew older. 16, 18, 20. Adrian in dark suits. Adrian in silent dinners. Adrian signing documents. Adrian standing alone at windows while family members praised his control and feared his silence. Then one final image. Adrian in a private study 3 months ago, holding a small framed portrait of me that my family must have sent with the marriage proposal. He looked at my painted face, and the silver mark on his hand dimmed for the first time. The pain stopped. I had heard that thought before, but now I felt what it meant. Not romance. Not obsession. Relief so profound it scared him. The vision released me all at once. I found myself standing in the conservatory again, Adrian's hands hovering near my arms, careful not to hold me without permission. His face was pale. What did you see? He asked. I wanted to lie for his pride. I could not. You, I said. Before you became this cold. Something in him went still. For a moment, he looked more frightened than I had ever been. Then you understand why you should stay away from the East Wing. But the memory had left something behind in me, a thread leading through the manor like a whispered path. I turned toward the glass doors. Far beyond the corridors, behind the forbidden black doors, the first Blackwood waited. And now it knew my name. No, I said softly. I understand why we have to go there. Adrian's thought answered before his mouth could stop it. If he enters that wing with me, the bond may finish waking. Then, beneath his fear, another thought rose, quieter and more honest than all the rest. And if he does not come, I may never be free. We left the conservatory through the servants' corridor because Adrian said the main halls were no longer safe, and for once, I did not argue. The manor had changed after the third bell. Or maybe I had. The walls seemed closer, the portraits darker, the candlelight thinner, as if the house had heard the first Blackwood speak through me and was now holding its breath. Adrian walked half a step ahead, his unloved hand hidden inside his coat, but the silver marks still glowed faintly through the fabric. My ring answered every few seconds with a cold pulse against my finger, guiding me toward the forbidden wing like a second heartbeat. We passed closed doors, silent alcoves, and tall windows where rain blurred the gardens into silver streaks. Twice, Adrian stopped and listened. Not with his ears, I realized, but with whatever enigma since the Blackwoods had trained into him. Each time, his thoughts brushed mine in sharp fragments. Celeste has moved the household staff. Too quiet near the west stairs. She wants us funneled toward the gallery. I wanted to ask how many traps a family could hide inside one beautiful home, but the answer was everywhere around me. At last, we reached a narrow records room behind the old library, a place that smelled of paper, dust, and locked away money. Adrian closed the door behind us and pressed his marked hand against a brass plate beside the shelves. Something clicked inside the wall. A panel slid open, revealing rows of family ledgers bound in gray leather. If you want the truth about your family, he said, we start here. My stomach sank. You already know. He did not deny it. I know enough. The softness in his voice frightened me more than anger would have. He pulled out a ledger marked with the Miller crest and opened it on the table beneath a green-shaded lamp. The pages were not romantic, not mystical, not anything that belonged in the nightmare I had imagined. That made them worse. Numbers, dates, payments, legal clauses, a marriage settlement, a debt transfer, a second private agreement signed 6 weeks before the wedding, bearing my father's neat signature. My name appeared in the center of the page, written as if I were land, jewelry, or an heirloom changing hands. Ethan Miller, verified listener candidate, to be delivered into Blackwood custody under marital protection. I read the sentence 3 times before it became real. My ears rang. Verified, I whispered. They tested me. Adrian's thought answered before he did. Quiet doctors. Private blood work. False wellness visits. They knew before he ever saw my portrait. I remembered my mother insisting on a full medical evaluation that spring because I had been having headaches. I remembered my father smiling too gently when he said it was only precaution. I remembered the doctor telling me I had an unusually sensitive nervous system, nothing more. My hands went cold. They knew what I was before I did. Adrian stood across from me, silent, as if giving me space to hate people he had never trusted. In that silence, I felt something inside me tear, not loudly, not dramatically, but with the clean finality of fabric giving way. The people who raised me had not misunderstood the danger. They had priced it. A sound came from the hallway. Adrian closed the ledger at once and moved between me and the door. His public voice, when he spoke, was barely above a whisper. Stay behind me. But his mind said something else. Not behind. Beside. He should never have to hide behind another person again. The door opened before either of us touched it. Mrs. Vale stood there, pale and composed, with a candle in one hand. Master Adrian, she said, Lady Celeste requests your presence in the East Gallery. Adrian did not move. Lady Celeste can wait. Mrs. Vale's eyes flicked toward me. Her thoughts trembled violently beneath her calm expression. Forgive me. I did not have a choice. They have Clara. My breath caught. Clara, I said without thinking. Mrs. Vale's face tightened. Adrian turned his head just enough to see me. What did you hear? They have Clara. The candle in Mrs. Vale's hand shook once. That was all the confirmation we needed. Adrian stepped toward her, not threatening, not loud, but so cold the room seemed to lose several degrees. Where is she? Mrs. Vale swallowed. East Gallery. Her thought followed, breaking apart with fear. Celeste needed the Omega to come willingly. A servant he liked was the easiest door. I should have been angry at Mrs. Vale, but all I saw was a woman trapped inside the same house, obeying monsters with a straight back because someone smaller was at risk. Adrian saw it too. His voice remained controlled. Return to the staff quarters. Take no corridor with a black runner. If anyone asks, you never found us. Mrs. Vale stared at him, stunned by mercy she had not expected. Then she bowed and vanished down the hall. I looked at Adrian. We are going. No, the word came instantly. Too instantly. This is what Celeste wants. She has Clara because of me. She has Clara because she is cruel. His eyes held mine. Do not confuse responsibility with blame. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they made something in my chest ache, because I wondered how many years he had needed someone to say them to him. The ring pulsed again, stronger now, pulling toward the east. Adrian, if I am the key, then maybe I am not helpless. Keys are used, he said. They do not choose the lock. I stepped closer. Then I will be the first. For a moment, his mask broke completely. His thought came bare and unguarded. That is why the pain stopped. Not because he is gentle, because he is brave in a way this house cannot understand. Before he could answer, a new voice entered my mind, bright, familiar, and terrified. Clara, Mr. Ethan, please do not come. It is a trap. My eyes filled with tears. Adrian heard the change in my breathing and knew. He closed his eyes for 1 second, as if surrendering to the inevitable. When he opened them again, the Enigma coldness had returned, but this time it did not feel like a wall between us. It felt like armor around us both. Stay within 5 feet of me, he said. Do not touch any door unless I tell you. If you hear the first Blackwood again, you tell me immediately. And if your aunt tries to use me, Adrian looked toward the dark corridor leading east. His voice was calm enough to freeze the rain. Then she will learn the difference between a key and a person who has chosen which door to open. Together, we walked toward the forbidden wing, and with every step, the house whispered my name like it had been waiting my entire life. The forbidden wing did not open like a place in a house. It opened like a memory the house had been trying to forget. Adrian pressed his marked hand to the black doors, and the silver lines beneath his skin brightened until they looked almost white. My ring answered with the same cold light. For a moment, the two glows reached toward each other across the narrow space between us, threads of pale fire stretching through the air. Then the doors unlocked with a sound like a held breath finally released. Beyond them, the east wing waited in darkness. No chandeliers, no flowers, no polished warmth for guests. Only a long corridor with black runners on the floor, walls lined with mirrors draped in gray cloth, and tall windows where rain traced restless patterns against the glass. The air smelled old, not dusty exactly, but sealed, as if no honest conversation had passed through it in years. Adrian stepped in first. I stayed close enough that my sleeve brushed his coat. 5 feet, he had said, but the bond seemed to have its own measurement. More than an arm length away, my head filled with whispers. Near him, the world narrowed to the steady rhythm of his thoughts. Left turn ahead. Do not look into the uncovered mirror. Celeste will expect fear. Give her silence instead. He did not say any of it aloud, but I followed each warning, and for the first time, hearing him felt less like invasion and more like survival. We turned past a row of family portraits with every face painted in shades of silver, white, and black. At the end of the hall, a wide gallery opened beneath a glass ceiling. Moonlight filtered through the rain, pale and fractured, falling across a circular floor marked with the same thorned symbol from Adrian's hand. Clara stood near the far wall, unharmed but trembling, her hands clasped tightly before her. 2 older servants stood beside her, eyes lowered, more afraid than threatening. Lady Celeste waited at the center of the circle in an ivory gown, beautiful as frost on a grave. She smiled when she saw us. There you are. Her gaze moved over Adrian and settled on me. And there he is, the little listener who learned to lie at dinner. Adrian's voice was calm. Release Clara. Of course. Celeste lifted one hand, and the servants stepped away from the maid. Clara looked at me with tear-bright eyes, and her thought reached me in a broken whisper. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I gave her the smallest nod I could. Celeste noticed. Her smile deepened. Compassion. How very Miller of you. Though your parents were never sentimental when money was involved. I felt the words land, but they did not break me the way she wanted. That wound was already open. She could only point at it. Adrian shifted slightly, placing himself between us again. This ends tonight. No, Adrian, Celeste said softly. Tonight is when you finally become useful. The covered mirrors along the walls stirred though no one touched them. The thorn circle beneath our feet gave off a dim silver glow. My ring grew so cold it numbed my finger. Celeste began to speak in a language I did not know, old syllables smooth as glass, and the house answered. Not with violence. With pressure. The air thickened. The floor hummed. The hidden thoughts in the east wing rose around me all at once. Generations of Blackwoods whispering through walls. Portraits, seals, and old grief. Open him. Find him. Use him. Complete the enigma. Adrian staggered one step. His mark burned bright beneath his skin. For the first time, fear broke through his face in front of someone else. Not for himself. For me. Get him out. I do not care what happens to me. Get Ethan out. Celeste's eyes gleamed. You hear him, do you not? That is why you were chosen. A listener opens the seal. An enigma becomes the weapon. The family survives. I looked at Adrian, and in the silver storm of his thoughts, I saw the boy from the memory, standing alone in a white room, told again and again that love was weakness, that obedience was safety, that his life belonged to the Blackwood name. The circle brightened. Adrian's control began to fracture, not into rage, but into overwhelming pain. Every feeling he had been forced to bury rushed toward the surface. Loneliness, shame, exhaustion, and the desperate need to keep me safe even if it cost him everything. Celeste extended her hand toward me. Call him, Ethan. Open the bond. Her command slid into my mind, but it did not fit there. I was not a door for her to unlock. I was not a key in her hand. I stepped around Adrian before he could stop me and entered the circle beside him. His head turned sharply. Ethan, no. His thoughts shook. Please do not choose this cage with me. I reached for his unloved hand. The moment our fingers touched, the whispers screamed without sound, then fell away as if someone had closed 100 doors at once. Only Adrian remained. His mind was vast, dark, and trembling, but it did not frighten me. Listen to me, I said. My voice sounded small in the gallery, but inside the bond it carried like a bell. You are not what they made you. Celeste's smile vanished. The circle flickered. Adrian stared at me, silver eyes wide with disbelief. You should be afraid. I am, I said, but not of you. His thoughts reached for mine, uncertain and aching. Then what are you afraid of? I held his hand tighter. That no one ever told you that you were allowed to be loved without being useful. The mark on his hand changed. The thorn circle split open, not breaking, but blooming into thin lines of light that wrapped around our joined fingers. Celeste took a step back. For the first time, the perfect Lady Blackwood looked afraid. The house groaned around us, not in anger, but in release. The covered mirrors dropped their gray cloths one by one, and instead of monsters, they reflected a boy, a man, and every lonely year between them. Adrian inhaled like he had been underwater his whole life. Then his mind touched mine clearly, gently, with no wall between us. Ethan, I heard not only the word, but everything inside it. Apology, wonder, fear, hope. The bond was no longer a weapon Celeste could command. It was a bridge neither of us had built alone. Adrian turned to his aunt, his voice quiet and final. You were wrong. A listener does not open an enigma for the family. His hand closed around mine. He opens the door so the enigma can leave. Behind us, from deep within the east wing, the ancient voice returned, no longer pleased, but awake. If he leaves, the house will choose another. The ancient voice rolled through the east wing like a verdict, and every mirror in the gallery darkened at once. If he leaves, the house will choose another. Lady Celeste looked toward the ceiling, her fear transforming into something almost religious. Around us, the thorn circle pulsed beneath the floor, silver light crawling through the cracks in the marble like roots searching for water. Clara had fled to the edge of the gallery. Mrs. Vale had appeared in the doorway with tears on her pale face, and the servants who had obeyed the Blackwoods for years stood frozen, watching the family legend wake beneath their feet. Adrian did not let go of my hand. That alone felt impossible. The man who had spent his life trained to stand alone was holding on in front of everyone. And through the bond, I felt how much courage that cost him. Not pride, not dominance. Courage. Celeste turned back to us slowly. You cannot walk away from generations of duty. Adrian's expression was calm, but his thoughts trembled with the weight of every child who had stood where he stood, marked before they ever had a choice. Watch me. Duty is what you call a cage when the bars are expensive, he said. The words landed in the gallery with quiet force. Celeste's face hardened. The seal protects this family. No, I said, surprising even myself. My voice did not shake this time. The seal protects the lie that the family matters more than the people inside it. The old presence in the house shifted toward me. I felt it pressing against my mind, vast and cold, not exactly cruel, but ancient in the way winter is ancient, convinced that survival mattered more than mercy. Listener, it whispered, you were made to open the enigma. I looked at Adrian, and for the first time, he looked back without hiding. His silver eyes were still guarded, still haunted, but no longer empty. Through the bond, I felt him waiting, not commanding, not pulling, simply trusting me with a choice. That trust steadied me more than any rule ever could. No, I answered the voice. I was born with the ability to hear what everyone else tried to bury. That does not mean I was made to obey it. My ring flared bright. Adrian's mark answered, and the light between our joined hands widened into a clear silver thread. It did not wrap around his throat or mine. It did not bind. It connected. I understood then what Celeste and the others had misunderstood for generations. A listener was not a lockpick. A listener was a witness. Someone who could hear the truth beneath training, beneath fear, beneath the polished language of families that called control love. The mirrors brightened again, but now they showed more than Adrian. They showed Blackwoods across the years, all pale and beautiful, all standing alone at different ages, each one marked, each one taught to silence the part of them that reached for warmth. Some had become cold. Some had become obedient. Some had vanished into portraits with eyes that still seemed to ask whether anyone had ever known them. Adrian saw them too. I felt the grief move through him, not as weakness, but as recognition. He was not the first prisoner. He could be the last. Celeste stepped toward the circle. Adrian, if you break the seal, the family will lose its greatest power. His mouth softened into the saddest smile I had ever seen. Then the family will have to learn how to live without owning people. The floor trembled once, and the ancient voice rose, sharper now. A Blackwood must remain. A Blackwood must carry the house. A Blackwood must answer. Adrian's hand tightened around mine. For a heartbeat, I feared he would offer himself, not because Celeste demanded it, but because sacrifice was the only language this house had ever taught him. His thought brushed mine, quiet and aching. If it needs someone, I can end this by staying. I turned toward him before the thought could become a decision. Do not you dare. His eyes widened. I almost laughed, even with tears burning my eyes. You are not a payment, Adrian. Not for your aunt, not for your ancestors, not for me. Something changed in him at those words. A lifetime of training did not disappear in a second, but I felt one bar of the cage bend. Then another. Adrian faced the center of the circle and lifted our joined hands. I am Adrian Blackwood, he said. I was born to this house, marked by this seal, and raised under its rules. I acknowledge the blood before me. The mirrors glowed. Celeste's smile returned, small and hopeful. Then Adrian continued. And I release every Blackwood after me from the belief that suffering is inheritance. The silver mark on his hand split fully open. Light poured from it, not harsh, not frightening, but warm enough to turn the rain on the glass ceiling into falling stars. The thorn circle beneath us unraveled line by line. The mirrors shuddered, and the faces inside them faded, not erased, but freed from watching. The ancient voice gave one final whisper, no longer commanding. Then who will remember us? I answered before Adrian could. We will. But memory is not the same as obedience. The light vanished. The gallery went silent. For the first time since I had entered Blackwood Manor, the house felt like stone, wood, glass, and nothing more. Celeste stood motionless, stripped of certainty. Mrs. Vale sank into a chair, covering her mouth with both hands. Clara began to cry softly, not from fear now, but relief. Adrian looked down at his hand. The mark was still there, but changed, silver lines softened into a simple open circle. My ring had changed too. The black stone was no longer black. At its center glowed a small silver point, like a star seen through deep water. Through the bond, I heard him clearly. Not a flood, not a command. Just Adrian, careful and stunned. Ethan, can you still hear me? I looked up at him. Yes. His throat moved. Then you know I do not know how to be a good husband. The honesty of it broke something tender in me. Good, I said. I do not know how to trust one yet. For the first time, Adrian laughed. It was quiet, rough, and brief, but it was real, and the sound made the broken gallery feel warmer than any banquet hall ever had. By dawn, the rain had stopped. We walked out through the front doors together, not fleeing, not hiding, but leaving by choice. The sky over the estate was pale blue, the kind of early morning color that made the world look newly washed. Adrian's coat rested over my shoulders again, but this time he did not leave it at my door and vanish. He walked beside me down the long gravel drive, his hand close enough that our fingers brushed with every step. Behind us, Blackwood Manor stood silent, beautiful, and finally only a house. Ahead of us waited lawyers, family consequences, hard conversations, and a marriage that had begun as a transaction and somehow become the first honest thing either of us had been given. Adrian glanced at me as the gates opened. Out loud, he said, "You are free to go anywhere you choose." In his mind, softer than sunrise, I heard the rest. "Please choose somewhere I can follow." I took his hand, and this time, there was no ring, no curse, no family watching to turn it into a symbol. Only my choice. Only his. Only the quiet beginning of a life where the truth no longer had to whisper to be heard.